I don't believe that outer space is the final frontier. I believe it is death. And I believe there are factions of people out there trying to conquer it. This is Inverted World Live. All right, welcome back, everybody. Episode 3 of Inverted World Live. It's good to see you all. I am joined by my producer, Alex. How are you?
Hi, Shane. Good to see you. Hi, everybody.
Ghost, anything going on with you this
Yeah,
week?
you know, it's so...
You had a kind of rough episode last time.
Yeah, I know.
Some tears were shed.
Some tears were shed. You know, I mentioned my grandmother Rose last week because I said that a psychic had, I'll put us both here. A psychic had seen her come to me at some point. This was years ago. But the other night I had a dream. My grandmother was in my dream. And I knew in my dream that she wasn't supposed to be there.
Whoa.
But it didn't matter. I saw her and I immediately ran to her and I was hugging her and kissing her cheek and I kept saying, I'm just so happy you're here. I'm so happy you're here, hugging her and kissing her cheek, and I could feel her flesh. I felt it. And I was hysterical crying. It was emotional, obviously. Yeah. And then I woke up and I had tears in my eyes.
Wow.
I'm like, does this mean I was visited for reals? Or is it just I had that memory in my brain?
Do you dream about her often?
No.
Not at all. It's been a while since. Have you ever dreamt about her?
I mean, probably. I have pretty vivid dreams, but it was just, I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting to be visited by the dead in your dreams. We've had callers who've been visited by the dead. And I think it could be a manifestation of whatever thoughts you've been having that day.
Right.
Or your subconscious signaling to you something.
Right.
Or you have been visited by the dead.
I don't know.
Which is nice.
And it was lovely, but
Yeah. And you wake up
sad at the same time. Yeah. I just cry all the time, everybody. Just my thing.
Well, it is good to be back. Less hauntings today in the studio, but still some.
I don't know.
There is something going on in the machine today, which I guess is a good segue to what we'll be talking about. We're talking about, the way people are building a future for humans to be immortal, and perhaps building imposing a technological supernatural universe on top of this world through the immortal transhumanist operations that we are seeing. So I'm excited to talk about this. Our guest is a remarkable writer, a good friend. He covers tech for the War Room. He is the author of Dark Eon, Transhumanism, and the War Against Humanity. He is Joe Allen. Let's bring on Joe Allen.
Let's go.
Joe.
Hey, Joe, can you hear us? Are you with us?
Hello, yes I can. Shane, of course, the machine has turned against him and his blasphemy. I can barely hear his mic, but I think our psychic connection is strong enough that I can intuit whatever is going on.
Okay. I hope we'll try to power through it. That's terrible to hear. So this is the reason why I brought Joe on this week.
Let's hear it.
Joe covers in great detail things going on in the dystopian technology world. And there was a viral video that people might have seen of an assembly line of decapitated heads where people are performing, or machines are performing head transplants. Depending on how you look at it, it could be a body transplant. It's obviously an AI creation by this company called BrainBridge. I don't know if you can pull that up.
Oh God,
Alex, if you can.
Let's see what I can do.
Dare we, mess with the machine? So I don't know if you guys saw this.
Let me see. I might have to get rid of Zoom here, though.
Yeah.
To go to it.
So BrainBridge turns out to be a fake company. This went viral. You might have seen them make the artificial womb video, but the people who made it are connected to AI pharmaceuticals. And even though this might be what the MIT review is calling a provocative work of art, I think it's not that far from things we'll be doing soon to human bodies.
Okay.
Can you press play on this for just a few?
Sure.
So for those who are just listening, we are watching a many-armed machine remove heads from bodies, replacing a new healthy body with a new head, and kind of sewing everything back in place, connecting the tissue. it's a remarkable, terrifying video.
Ugh. I'm not okay with this.
So yeah, BrainBridge is not a real company, but this doesn't seem very far
from
what we were doing. And for those who don't know, scientists have been working on head transplants in monkeys, rats, and dogs for over 100 years.
Yeah.
So we can stop it there.
Okay.
If people want to follow, you can find it on YouTube. It's a pretty ridiculous video. So let's get Joe in here. And Joe, before we went live, you said, if you can hear me, which I hope you can, that this was a symbol of something. Can you expand on what you meant by this? When you saw this, what does that mean?
Yeah, so what you see there is a conceptual video. It's put together by Ayala, and he's known really for these sorts of concept videos. He was made famous with his ecto-life pod baby visuals. That was in 2022, if I recall correctly.
Yep.
So, to me, so what you're talking about, when you're talking about whether it's the ecto-life pod babies, which there are a lot of people right now working on artificial wombs, biobags, and as you mentioned, people have been working on head transplants for a long time. People are probably familiar with the famous attempt at a dog head transplant. That was 1954, a guy, Vladimir Demikov. And these sorts of visuals that Ayala is working on, and none of that is happening unless it's happening deep within the earth in a DARPA-funded lab or CCP-funded lab, or maybe a joint operation. But outside of these sorts of black budget operations that I don't know about, and perhaps you don't know about, I don't know, we can only imagine what's going on. And what we see are these really kind of fumbling attempts at these sorts of things. Now, as a symbol, it's quite powerful because there is this ethic in biomedicine that the human body is kind of a machine, and just as an automobile, as the parts wear out, you can keep replacing them one by one until essentially you've replaced the entire car. And if the human body is anything like that, so far, no luck, but let's say the human body is like that. Let's say it's like Martine Rothblatt, the famous transgender transhumanist, aims to see happening. You'll have either human-to-human transplants, which already exist. Heart transplants happen all the time. You have xenotransplantation, right? So you grow a genetically modified heart in a pig and then put it in a human. They're working on that right now to very, very, very limited success. But as these visions are put into the public consciousness, these visions are seeded in our imaginations, I think that it makes what's happening now, what's actually happening now, anything from a pacemaker to an artificial knee to an artificial hip, and then some of the more extravagant and ambitious projects, such as putting in a Neuralink chip to basically heal or complete the spinal cord, or even to augment the human brain. These extreme visions, these extreme symbols, make the relatively minor operations seem mundane, very, very acceptable. And it has two functions. One, it normalizes what is happening in biomedicine, but it also, I think, it colors people's concept of what it means to be immortal, amortal, and the possibilities of being immortal. And in the end, I suspect that most of these projects will come to little to no fruition. But let's just say that, again, they are able to perfect halfway points. If the aim of life isn't some sort of transcendent spiritual realization, then the aim of life is just simply to keep the heart pumping and the brain going, then as this ethic spreads, you have a lot of companies, such as BrainBridge and Ectolife, such as Moderna and Pfizer, such as the company, it's escaping me now, that Martine Rothblatt runs. These sorts of companies stand to make billions and trillions of dollars on that is a symbol for the dream of technological immortality, and it's also, I think, an emblem of the ridiculousness of human life and human ambition.
I hate to pause you right there. Is there any chance your mic is not into the computer? People in the chat seem to have an issue. They can't hear you very well. I don't think it's on our end. I think the volume's really low. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No. How about now? How's our technology doing?
Guys in the chat, can you hear Joe any better?
Everyone's freaking out. We can't hear you. We're trying to make it work, everybody. I don't know.
These are the demons in the technology. This is what we get.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Okay, well, so ladies and gentlemen in the chat and robots in the chat, can you hear me? I'm trying to yell. I'm using my Tennessee outside voice.
Yeah, everyone seems to think it might be the mic. I don't know. You know what? I'm not the best person here to figure it out.
That's a bummer. No, yeah, everyone's having a hard time.
I don't want to. I don't want to have people putting their faces next to the screen. That's not good for your head. The radiation is bad for your brain. So maybe if you guys can play one of those videos of like chicks dancing or whatever. Try to reconnect.
Yeah.
Is that the way to go?
Yeah. We'll try calling back in a few. All right,
maybe it's an internal mic thing.
Yes.
I don't know.
Stand by.
When sign off, I'm going to try to come back.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, man.
Okay.
So can we pull up the chat
boy.
and see those guys? Sorry about that. You guys can hear us all right though?
I don't know.
That's a bummer.
Yeah, that is a bummer.
I have a lot of questions I need to ask Joe about, and he's an expert on this stuff.
I know it is really kind of hard to hear him. I'm trying to do my best over here. It's. I don't believe it's on our end. Everyone's saying it might be his mic over there.
Yeah. Yeah. We're
Let me
being
get us both
sabotaged
here.
by
We can do this
the
together.
transhumanists that Joe Allen writes about for the War Room. So we'll try to bring him back, and if nothing works.
Well, he's still here. So should we end it and start again?
Yeah, I would end it and start again.
Okay.
And while you do that,
okay.
I would never get my head transplanted. I
don't think I could either. I don't even think I could do Botox, but you know.
I'm extremely against it, and I think we're going too far. I think it's becoming progress at all costs that progresses humanity out of existence. And these videos, although it's fake, I don't think it's very far from reality. What Joe was saying that you guys couldn't hear is that there's a bit of a bridge between nanotechnology, stuff like Neuralink, with this head transplant scenario. And that's like, and this is, I'm being serious, some of the first head transplants that they were trying to do for humans that I think they performed on cadavers and on animals, they used just a special glue to put everything back together. I forget that there's a very special name with many syllables. I can't remember the whole name.
It's Gorilla Glue.
But that was like the hard part, is actually putting the stem back together. But now they've got some type of nanotechnology glue that will bridge that, and why I think they're called.
It just reminds me of Face Off.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just don't know if I can get behind.
Face Off was of predictive programming for where we are now. Although there's been successful face transplants.
Yeah.
We've had.
Well, that's probably what they're doing to P. Diddy right now, and
we thought about that with Epstein for sure.
Epstein.
And then the other thing I want to talk about with Joe, and hopefully we get him back.
I did send you a new link. You have to send it to him.
Poor Joe. And
I
sorry
know,
guys.
This sucks.
Sorry guys in the chat for that. We're trying to figure it out. But this is what we've been dealing with.
Someone in the chat said brought his mic off the Temu. Okay, that's pretty funny.
Oh, man.
Shut up.
But yeah, I'm very much against this stuff. But it's hard because I'm super against Neuralink because of the consequences that reach into the deeper part of the future, where people are going to be almost forced to have it. Although they say it's going to be optional. It's like, people will argue, say, SOAR smartphones. If you don't have a smartphone, you're basically opting out of modern civilization.
Okay.
Which sounds amazing to me sometimes.
Yeah.
But I'm not a total Luddite, because I think it's impossible. And one of Joe's sentences, a sentence I've heard Joe say is, even the Unabomber built bombs. So someone who didn't like technology was still making technology.
Yeah.
So it's kind
obviously
of impossible.
Technology is over my head.
So can we pull him back in?
Is he? I don't think he's with us. Let's see.
Sorry guys, we're trying to get him back in.
Let's see.
And while we wait, I'll just keep saying.
I'm just gonna switch to you until I figure out what's happening here.
While we wait, something else I wanted to talk with Joe about was, there's been scientists working on these head transplants since about 1908, and they've been doing it with mice, with rats, monkeys, dogs, claiming that some of them have been successful. They've lived for like 36 hours, some of these animals. And there's a person who signed up to have his head transplanted onto a working body in the past few years. So he was ready to go receive a new body. He's a paraplegic. He's Russian. I think his name is Valery. And he signed up. He was willing to try this out, knowing the consequences. And he wound up getting married. Has a wonderful family now. I believe he's in Florida.
Just monologue, Shane. You're doing great.
So,
first of all, my monitors are all messed up too. I don't know what's even happening here. I don't know.
We're just totally running with it. I like the chaos. I'm just going to embrace it.
I don't
really
wish I could
love
see
the
chaos.
Chat, though. I want to see what they're saying.
The chat. I don't even.
Respond.
Let me try and get back to this. Okay. Do you really want to?
Yeah, I like it all.
Can you see it? Okay. Here.
So someone said Joe Allen's book is a must read. Joe Allen is a remarkable writer, and everything he covers this stuff so in depth. For the War Room, I highly recommend. He was the perfect guest to have on.
I know.
And of course, the technology goes haywire.
I know.
As I'm trying to talk about this demon tech, and this is also what I get for saying all these things about technology, because I do love it. It's the funny thing is I don't want to be a total Luddite because I love having these conversations, but there is a line. My line is well before the head transplant.
Okay.
How are you doing?
I don't know. I feel like I'm seeing 6 different things in my field of vision right now that it's like hard to focus.
Yeah, and we're getting inundated with people trying to help behind the curtain.
Yeah, I got my phone and like 4 monitors.
At any point now, I feel like a hologram of Elon Musk is going to appear inside of this room and laugh at me for all the things I've said about Neuralink.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I'm worried about. That's what I'm worried about. That's why I was trying to have Joe on. I'm sorry, guys. I was so stoked on having this conversation.
I'm afraid if I bring you over here, I don't know what happens. Like so you can see what's happening here. Are we good?
And
I don't know. It's just going to be me and you in this Memorial Day weekend.
The other thing that bothers me, and we're both parents.
Yes.
And I really think this is something we might have to have a conversation with kids with at some point.
Oh, I am so worried to have those conversations.
Grandkids. So I'm not sure how fast it's going to happen, but these things do develop quickly. Is at some point, the idea of becoming immortal will probably become mainstream. It probably won't happen for our kids, but we're going so fast, and they have the first Neuralink patient now. It's not going so well because his threads came undone in his brain, but they fixed that. But we develop so quickly now, I think at some point it's going to be like, Mommy, Daddy, I want to have a Neuralink.
Oh, God, please.
I have friends at school who have the Neuralink. I'm sitting in classroom, I'm using my notebook, I'm using my iPad, but they've got Google in their brain. And it sounds ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I know Joe writes about this, and he says sometimes he feels like a crazy person talking about it because he's filled with all this information that the transhumanist community talks about. But yeah. So if we can't get Joe, I guess we should go to the callers. Yeah.
Sure, let's do it. Okay. Let me one thing at a time.
I hope you guys can hear the callers. I'm going to watch to see if you guys can hear them or not.
Oh, my God. Okay.
I was really looking forward to talking more about these time-traveling AI Frankensteins.
Well, we'll have to have him on again. We'll bring him into the studio next time. That could really be good.
So
we got Brandon coming in. Okay. Let's see. Brandon, are you with us? Brandon? Shoot. Brandon? Maybe he wasn't ready for us to... Okay.
Oh, man.
This is great.
Yeah.
We needed this, I guess.
No, this was bound to happen. I'm surprised it didn't happen on the first episode or the second. So is someone there?
I don't know. He's in the live. Am I not in the live? Maybe I'm not live.
If you're there, can you hear us?
Oh, God. Let me get my other guy.
Let's try it.
He just went into live or something. Yes, please. Bring him in. Okay.
Just going to start talking to the ghost who's been haunting this room.
I know. Well, it's a 7-year-old boy is what I think. Because it doesn't seem to be malicious. It's just fuckery, if I can say that. YouTube.
Oh yeah, yeah. At this point,
Yeah, I mean,
you're allowed a few. So is anybody there?
Cool. Is anybody with us? Done. Okay. But I'm not. Wait. We got this. Dude, it's just a night.
Wow. We are literally trying to bring the callers in, and it's not even accepting the call. So.
I mean, I know I'm not the most capable with this stuff, but this is too much.
I think there's something in the machine. Well, hopefully someone calls in soon.
Everyone, I feel like everyone left Discord. They're like, I'm not messing with this.
These guys don't know how to handle these ghosts. We got to call in someone to deal with this.
Okay, I don't know.
Guys, I'm so sorry. We were running everything smoothly right before we went live.
We were great.
This is how it's been.
This is how it's been.
Every episode so far. We'll be in the room. Everything's working great.
So am I.
And the technology just collapses around us.
Brandon, are you with us?
We can see you, but we can't hear you.
They all look like that. This is what happens when you just leave the room for a couple days and come back on a Sunday.
There's something about this house, I'm telling you. Guys,
let's just read people's comments. Wait.
We had a tornado last night. Hopefully that's the end of it.
He's in live voice chat right now. But
speaking of tornadoes, something else I think they create out of a machine. I was hoping to talk about DARPA with Joe. Yeah, this is the thing. What's funny is I've done Pop Culture Crisis a bunch of times.
Yeah. And
there's been a few times where I've done it, and all the technology stops working. The show actually got turned off somehow, and they were blaming me like a joke. But I'm beginning to think it might not be a joke. That there's some type of demon gremlin in the tech following me. Maybe because I grew up so far outside of technology, like borderline Amish in an old stone house haunted by all those ghosts, that it's like, you know what, this guy doesn't deserve technology at all. So while we wait, you should tell us a story about Long Island.
Oh, like what we talked about earlier?
Yeah,
I was telling you?
yeah. So let's set that up, because
okay.
I know we were talking about this story initially. We're going to talk about TWA, the flight, and when I was investigating the Long Island serial killer,
right?
I was out in Long Island a lot. We're both from New York originally, and you brought up how you were from there, and you were out on Montauk.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, Montauk is the very edge of Long Island.
Right.
And
yeah, I was really, okay, so what was that, 96?
About that? I don't remember the exact date, but yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I was summer vacation in Montauk, and the TWA flight happened. But before I knew that it happened, a friend and I, we were on the beach, and there was bonfires happening, and we were just hanging out on the beach. I must have been about 11 years old. And we both thought we saw ghosts in the water.
What are they like? When you say you saw ghosts, what did it like? Was it like fog type ghosts, or? It
was like fog, but also like body pieces. I can't remember. This has been so long ago, but I remember thinking about it was not a full figure, you know. I don't know. It was really creepy, and I remember being really creeped out by it. And I remember my friend going to her mom and just being like, "We think we see ghosts in the ocean," and that's when she told us that the flight had crashed. Wow. Which is crazy. And so for so many years, I thought there's no way we could have seen anything. Right. I must have maybe we overheard a conversation and no one was telling us what happened. And we both just thought we saw something that we heard, but.
Right. Is it maybe it's a false memory?
I think maybe a false memory. Maybe.
Who'd you say you told? Your mom?
No, it was my friend's mom.
Your friend's mom?
Yeah, she was
maybe ask her, does she remember you asking that?
I wonder. I should do that.
Does she know? Yeah, because it could be a false memory. I've had things where you remember things backwards.
Yeah.
Especially when you're that young.
Yeah.
But that's interesting.
I don't think it's the false memory is the part where we definitely saw things before we knew about the crash. The question is, did we hear something and try and make sense of it? That's you know what I mean.
You didn't see anything.
We didn't see anything.
In terms of the crash.
No, we didn't see any. Well, we did after. Once we knew that you could from Montauk see lights where the accident had happened.
Right.
But yeah.
I forgot how we got to the Long Island from the serial killer. Oh, I know why. Because one of the people who was involved. So for those who don't know about the Long Island serial killer, there was this murderer operating for like 2 decades, and no one knew what was going on. And in this town of Gilgo Beach, and it's like a surf town, and it's known as like the surf capital of the USA. And I heard about this story where they found all these women's bodies, prostitutes lined up on the beach. They found in December, and a police officer was training a cadaver dog named Blue, and his dog found a cadaver. Oddly enough, which is very bizarre that you're training your cadaver dog and then you found a cadaver. But they did, and about 6 months prior, a woman went missing named Shannon Gilbert, and they kind of looked for her for a little bit, but she was a prostitute, shady history, drug use. She did make a 911 call the night she disappeared in this town of Gilgo Beach, and then they kind of gave up. Winter happened, and we cut to Blue, the cadaver dog, and when they find the cadaver, they think it's Shannon Gilbert, but it turns out to be another young woman who was also a prostitute.
Yeah.
And they were like, "Oh, that's crazy." Then it snowed, and so they were going to look for anything else, but they couldn't because of the snow. They went back a few days later, and they found another body. And they're like, "That one's not Shannon Gilbert either." Then they find another body. That one's not Shannon Gilbert. And these bodies are just lined up perfectly along the beach, not where people would surf, but on the other side in the bramble, in this very quiet part, off a very desolate highway.
Yeah.
Ocean Parkway.
Ocean Parkway, which is so crazy. So from being from Long Island, I remember seeing caution tape on Ocean Parkway. And like that whole story happening. So I just remember when we met, I was, like, very few people know, like, you have to kind of be like a Long Islander to like know that story. It's
something's wrong with Long Island.
There really is.
I think that's one of those places where. So I did this investigation for a few years and talked to so many people from that area, and there's multiple serial killers from this one location. It's also not very far from the Amityville Horror House.
Yeah.
Which is bizarre.
Yeah.
And so talking to all these people. Yeah. One of the people who was being blamed for being the killer was this really strange man, and I believe he had a fake leg, and he called himself a doctor. I don't know if he really was a doctor or not. I forget his name, but he had this weird limp because of his fake leg, and he claimed to have housed Shannon Gilbert at one point before she disappeared. And so people were thinking it's him. And I guess it was him, unless I'm getting it wrong, but I think it was this guy who had some connection to TWA Flight 800.
No.
And when it crashed, he like inserted himself into the story. Okay. Which is why I believe in the story. I could be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure it's one of the reasons why I started calling people grief whores. Because they're people who attach themselves to grief.
Yeah.
And they need to be a part of it, and like they start making themselves like the center point of a problem, where they're just in the periphery of it. So he's inserting himself with the families, and with Shannon and all that stuff, so that everyone thought he was him, to the point where they mocked him out of Long Island. Yeah, like he just had to disappear. So it was crazy.
So whatever happened to him?
He moved to I forget where, I want to say Florida or something, but there was a website that was created right after all the bodies were found, and they just started blaming everybody in town. Yeah. Because everyone, they blame the police chief, I believe it was.
Yeah. Well, he was also, wasn't he like known for like abuse or something? Or he was like a bad guy?
Yeah. So, I mean, we'll talk about Long Island, how haunted it is. And hopefully the chat's still here listening, or we're just talking to each other. But the police chief of Suffolk County. Suffolk. She got so mad when I was saying that.
Suffolk County.
Because Alex was editing all of these the investigations that I would recite. So the
that's why it's like you're on Long Island, and I like
right. I'll still do it wrong though. Yeah. So this guy somehow was promoted to, like, I believe, chief of police after already having been caught with a prostitute in his patrol car, and people thought he was the killer for a long time for various reasons, and one of them being when he was a young boy, he watched a bunch of other boys murder a child in the woods in Long Island. And it wasn't just like a murder, which is horrible enough. He then watched the boys stuff like rocks inside the corpse's mouth. And then I believe he testified against them. So people were like, he had witnessed some type of horrible trauma and had to maybe relive it. You know, people were making connections to shows like Dexter, right? Where Dexter's born in blood and he becomes that. I don't know if that was the case with him. and I'll get to my theory in a little bit about it all, but on top of the prostitute in the patrol car, on top of this really violent history, this like traumatic event that he witnessed as a boy, he, during the investigation of the serial killer, and while being blamed for everything, beat up someone for stealing porn and like sex toys and I want to say drugs, but you gotta look up the articles, out of his car. So beat him up, and then he went to jail. And then they were like, this guy was totally covering up the investigation. It was a whole mess.
Yeah. And
so every avenue of this investigation I was doing had some problem, whether it was the grief whores, like that fake doctor guy, or there were like carnies getting involved who had nothing to do with the story whatsoever, but they're like inserting themselves into the families of the victims, being like, I can help you, you know? And there's just no face to the killer at all. I'm talking to psychics who think they can remote view the bodies. And this one guy was like, I've helped the police catch other bodies. But, you know, it's like, who knows with these things. He on his website, he claims this. But he's in like Sweden, you know? But I'm talking to everybody, and at the end of it, you know, the first investigation, there's no answers. My only theory is that I think it's possible that all these people kind of work together.
Yeah.
I think maybe not even one killer. I think it's just weird, desolate town with these what we now know are possible really deranged orgies that were happening.
Yeah, sort of like an underground like cult of sorts.
Yeah. And I don't know what kind, but that
makes so much sense for Long Island.
But there were a lot of very shady people who were involved, and all in this one area. Also, a serial killer who was already in jail lived right there as well. Yeah. From Manorville, which is close. Yeah. And he was like I won't say an architect. No, he was an architect. He was a carpenter. And the FBI like got him they arrested his brother, and when they arrested the brother for something, his like blood got put in the system, and the blood matched one of the bodies from years prior, way before Gilgo Beach. And they were like, but it's not him, because this guy I think was like in jail at some point, so it's got to be his brother. So they staked out John Bittrolf's house in Manorville, got like a cup out of the garbage. They're like, that's the guy. And it matched. And this is the whole reason like the story became kind of terrifying to me, and why I started writing about it, was because 30 some odd years ago, they found a mutilated torso in Manorville in the woods. No other body parts. And then when they discovered these bodies, I started the story with Blue, the cadaver dog, after they found multiple bodies, basically a graveyard. There was a child, there was a woman, there was some guy like cross-dresser in there. They also found a pair of hands, and those hands, all these years later, matched the torso they found in Manorville. So I'm like, is this the same person operating, or is there multiple people? But that guy was in jail, who did the torso mutilation in Manorville, and there were bodies in Gilgo Beach that were there, you know, while he was in jail. So like it has to be people sharing a graveyard, a cult of serial killers. So when that detail I read about it, like I have to like figure something out here. I want to like do.
You wanted to crack the case.
I drove myself crazy. Yeah. I did call the FBI at one point because I thought we found something. Yeah. And then that was when I started talking to a lot of locals who were private investigators, we'll say, armchair detectives. And they were like, these people were like, Long Island is haunted because all these communities are built on like Indian burial grounds. And they were so convinced that this was the case. Yeah. And then me and this one person who went by the name Lindsay Lohan 7. Like I never knew their real names.
Which Lindsay Lohan's from Long Island, by the way.
Right. It might have been her. Who knows?
She's just on her hobby is just this.
Who knows? That'd be great if that was really her.
Yeah.
She totally disappeared after all this. But we found this website called Utopia Guide, and it was basically a Yelp for prostitutes in Long Island. But it was a Yelp for the men to review them. And they had this system of rating their women, right? And so it's kind of wrong to call it Yelp because it actually predates Yelp. It started in, I want to say like 99 or something. Whatever, it was before Yelp. And I read through it all thinking, because there's a lot of violent postings on this website, at least there were at the time, and I could watch them follow the news of the bodies found, and I could watch them be like, oh, I was with her, you know, and they'd have like memories of being with these corpses that were now in the headlines. And then, you know, I could also watch them type out reviews for these women while 9/11 was happening. And so they're talking about a tower getting hit while they're also rating like the girl they slept with in the parking lot at some Marriott. And then like, oh, another tower got hit. And then so after all that, I came across this one guy who they all thought was the best. They loved this one guy who was always writing these crazy, they called what he wrote epistles, because they were very in depth. Like he was like the only person who wrote kind of eloquently. And very long, and also about how he'd like to do like crazy abusive acts on women. And like it could have been a total troll, because it wasn't like this wasn't on the dark web. It wasn't like you couldn't not find it. No one knew to look for it, unless you're in this community, right? But he had he'd break down how he would go about leaving his wife in the morning, where he would do it, like why he liked doing it in public, why he liked to hurt these women, all these details, some of them quite graphic. And we were all convinced like this is the guy. And then you'd be like, well, why would he say it publicly? Again, maybe it's not, you know, but we were driving ourselves crazy at that point. And that was it. You know, I kind of ended there because there's no answers. And then fast forward a few years to this past summer. Yeah. And they arrest a guy.
They arrested a guy. The guy.
We don't know yet.
Well, I guess not.
We don't know yet, but he's a giant man.
Yes.
Who happened to be an architect. And that was the other thing. I didn't say this, but like the profile we created of, you know, in our little circle for the story I did was like, he's probably a well-to-do person,
right,
who's respected in the community.
Well, he was a married guy with a son, I think, too.
2 kids.
2 kids.
Two kids. Yep, married. And we thought that because you can't operate for that long without being, you know, a part of the community.
Yeah.
Because there's different types of serial killers, obviously. There's like a Ted Bundy who could operate in the shadows and look and dress nicely. Then there's, you know, the crazy ones like, you know, Ed Gein, not really a serial killer, but, you know, more like a loner, digging up bodies, which is crazy, you know. But I was assuming this guy's more like Ted Bundy, because Ted Bundy could get away for so many years, get involved in politics and kind of charmed people. And I've talked to people who've, they claim, been in the car with Ted Bundy. Yeah. And they were like, he didn't like me because he could smell something wrong with me because I've had children. This is what she said. Wow. And that his face changed like an animal. And she described the car and everything. But again, I'm very skeptical of all these stories because people, all this information about Ted Bundy's out there. Yeah. About what his car looked like and everything. So it could be people inserting themselves into the story they know I'm writing about, and that's that. Right. But so when they arrested this guy for the Long Island serial killer, he was a giant man who was an architect with a very successful architecture firm, who had done airports and you know, I think like Taco Bell or something.
Yeah, and like all my Long Island friends, like the wife knew. She had to have known. I think he had stuff in the they pulled out a bunch of stuff in the basement too.
Yeah, they ripped up his whole house. Yeah. And they got him the same way they got John Bitroff. They pulled garbage out of the he threw like pizza crust into a garbage. And
sorry, I just checked out for a second. I'm like,
yeah, I'm like,
I don't even know. Are we still streaming? Yeah. I don't even know.
But if I'm going to finish it anyway. But so, yeah, this guy looks like a human version of Michael Myers. He's got this weird haircut he made. It looked like they cut it with scissors, and I want to say he's like 6'6". I'm 6'2". Yeah, I saw him in court, and he towered over us. I think he's like 6'6", between 6'6" and 6'8", really big. Yeah. And yeah, so it just so happened that when they arrested him, I was in L.A. and because I, you know, have been writing about serial killers for so long, I'm out in California. I think about Ted Bundy. I think about Ed Kemper. You know, there'd be no profiling of serial killers without Ed Kemper. If people watched, what was that great show that David Fincher did? Mindhunter. You know, they interview Ed Kemper to figure out how we're going to profile serial killers, which you can find the real footage of that. Like they redid it for the show, but there's actual footage of Ed Kemper, who was another giant man. And I think this guy that they caught in Long Island is very much like Ed Kemper. In terms of build, Ed Kemper healed himself.
I guess you kind of have to be, because you're cutting up bodies, and I don't know.
Yeah, well, we don't really know what he did, this guy in Long Island, because we know they found bodies, but I don't know if they've actually released the actual descriptions of what they found, because some people don't know if they left them in the house and brought them to the beach. They don't know if he drove on Ocean Parkway and dragged them into the Bramble. They don't know if he took a boat across the bay, because he lived across the bay, to the beach and did that. They don't know why he lined them up all of a sudden, why he had these like basic trophies. There's so many things we don't know, but it just so happened. Yeah, I'm in LA finding out the news. I'm already there thinking about these freaking serial killers, because California's got a big problem.
Yeah, well,
with serial killers, and a ton. And I've talked to so many people who are like family of victims of other serial killers for this story, because those people are also inserting themselves into this story, because everyone wants to be a part of it, because it's one of the bigger mysteries in terms of serial killers up until recently.
Okay, I think we can go to Discord
right.
when you're ready.
Yeah. I'll just finish up by saying it was weird that then I flew home, and it worked out randomly that I was going to be back in New York when this guy was going to stand trial for the first time. And I was like, I kind of have to see him in person.
Yeah.
Because I've been writing about the idea of him for so long.
You needed closure.
But it's not, because
you still don't know.
It's weird how they handle the whole thing. We don't really have. Hasn't been a trial yet. It hasn't really been.
And how random? Like, it just happened. It's been going on for years.
It
feels very random.
Suffolk County screwed up that investigation for so long.
Shocker.
And people were like, what is going on here? Obviously,
no one can do their job.
The chief of police
right?
problem is in jail.
Yeah.
I think the police commissioner was also put in jail for corruption.
Yeah.
So they created a new task force, and within like a year, they were like, oh, we just found all this evidence all of a sudden that's been here forever, like a car description.
Right.
They showed us a belt all of a sudden, and all these things like randomly after all these years, and people are like, okay, and then boom, there's this guy.
Yeah.
So he's still just a suspect.
Yeah.
Because he hasn't had a trial.
Right.
Just because he looks like a maniac
right.
doesn't mean he's guilty.
Yeah.
And everyone there, like, watching the corporate press kind of fawn over him. Like, I wanted to see him, but I also want to see the press react to him.
Yeah.
And it was just as ghoulish to see the press react, because for a while he wasn't coming out. And I swear to you, the corporate press, the people I was sitting next to in the courtroom, started chanting, "We want whatever his name is. We want him."
Yeah.
Like, it's like freak show.
Yeah.
And they were literally chanting this. I'm like, you're just as disgusting. And then to bring it back to Ted Bundy, and we'll go to college, it reminded me of the day they executed Ted Bundy. People lined up outside the prison where they electrocuted him and started barbecuing and selling merchandise. I'm like, it's kind of gross,
Yeah.
I understand, because he's a monster and we should rid ourselves of monsters, but it's gross. Like, I don't really like cheering on the death of I think there's something upsetting about it. But yeah.
I mean, people just want closure. That's all it is. They want justice. They want answers. And after something that's been going on for so long.
Yeah, and the story haunts me. Like, the story is personally haunting me for so long. And we'll go to callers. And I
hope a prostitute visits you in your dreams.
No, I hope not. Thank you, Alex.
Okay, you can come visit me.
Yeah, you can visit Alex. Please don't visit me. In terms of personally haunting me, is that every time I would finish what I thought would be the end of a story, somehow it would come back into my life randomly through personal ways. So when I opened back up my little story about it, all of a sudden someone I went to college with, her brother is the guy who found one of the bodies in Manorville. So I'm like talking to him now. I'm like, oh, now I have a whole new like aspect to the story.
Interesting.
Of this part of the serial killer who was John Bitchrolf. And then before that, the other part, the other time I thought I was done. I finished up my story. I go to hang out with some friends in New York, and a guy named Shane, another Shane. I don't know many Shanes.
Yeah.
He comes home. We're having a play date with our young kids. He was a nurse in some hospital in New York. And he's like, he had known about the story I was writing. And he goes, dude, I just took care of Shannon Gilbert's sister.
Weird.
Because she had a psychotic break and murdered her mother.
What?
Who I just messaged a month or two prior.
Wow.
Because I was talking to Mary Gilbert.
Yeah.
Who's basically, she was the face of the investigation. Not even investigation. She was the face of this mystery because the cops weren't doing anything. So it was like, and that whole story, you guys can look it up. It's so graphic. We don't have to get into it in detail, but it's insane that he happened to be the person who put her in a straitjacket, right? And now she's on SSRIs in some prison in New York. Possibly in the same prison that John Bitchrolf's in.
Just write the book, Shane.
I don't want to write any more of it. So
Okay,
let's hear.
All right, let's try this. Here we go. Brandon.
Hey, I can hear you.
Oh boy.
Yo, thank you for waiting.
What is up?
Sorry for my spiel on the serial killer. I felt like I had to get that off my chest. Thanks for fighting through the gremlins in our technology to join us tonight. How are you?
I'm here. Thanks for having me. That's awesome.
Yeah. So what's up, man? What have you experienced in this crazy deranged world we're in?
Okay, so I got some ghost stories. I got a Mothman story, and I got a UFO story. But we're gonna try to keep it shorter for you guys.
Oh, let's do it.
And I think I want to tell you the UFO stuff today.
Cool.
So I have a personal UFO little sighting, but to kind of set it up, I grew up in northern Maine, probably like 3 hours north of where Stephen King is from, in a town of like 2,000 people.
Wow.
And there's a huge Air Force base that was abandoned, Loring Air Force Base. And that is the one case where there was a UFO sighting that the U.S. government admitted that the UFO got into the nuclear facility airspace and actually got either landed or got real close to the ground. But they actually admitted that, and that was in 1975, and there's multiple different viewpoints on that and different people who have kind of witnessed and seen what went on, but they actually tried to cover it up. So that's the main story, but there's a little bit more detail to that I have.
Yeah, please tell us more.
So I grew up on a... Well, what's that?
Sorry, I was just going to say, if you know any like the other story accounts too, you can share those, but yeah, whatever you got.
Yeah, so a guy is Michael Wallace. He was a Air Force pilot who actually has an account on YouTube where he talks about it, and he was flying for the Air Force around Portland, Maine, going towards Bangor, and they actually called him the night after this had happened once, and they said, you need to leave formation and hurry up here at your discretion. And he said, that was really weird. That doesn't normally happen. So get us there as fast as you can and check out this UFO. Some people on the runway said it was a 4 to 5 foot long car length object that was rapidly moving back and forth, and the lights were going on and off, and it was going from one end of the runway to the other. But the really interesting thing is, where I lived was right outside the woods next to the base. And in those woods, the Department of Defense funded a facility, which is now closed, so it's kind of public information, but it housed the most advanced weapons in the history of mankind in those woods. And they had concrete igloos, like hundreds of bunkers, and this was a facility that was all around the country at the time, but this was one of the biggest ones in SAC, in the Air Force.
Well, like a DARPA situation?
Yeah, it was I believe so. I believe it was DARPA. It was called the North River Depot, and it was in the woods, 4 electric fences around it, and I mean, there's tons of concrete buildings. One of the buildings, the second story, is all concrete, and underneath is a bunch of safes where they would put the nukes together and put the parts together, and then they would put it on, I believe it was B-52s, but this was right next to the alert area. It was part of Operation Chrome Dome, and they would fly the nuke 24/7 around part of the world, and this was one of the stops. But a lot of people think these UFOs we're doing this to like actually stop maybe someone from dropping a nuke or starting the chain reaction. But I don't know if you've seen War Games, but it's kind of along those lines there.
Okay, I haven't seen it, but I've heard stories from other people in the military, and you can find them online, about they saw UFOs before a nuke launch, and they believe it was to maybe prevent mass destruction. Do you believe it's like extraterrestrials, or do you think you're seeing everyone's seeing military technology that they're confusing for UFOs?
Yeah, so that's definitely something like I've wondered myself. The specific area where it was landing was where they would put those um, pretty much bombs on the planes. It's where the guys would go, and that the Strategic Air Command met there, and they were freaked out. The heads like were getting freaked out, and they were saying this was going on over and over and over again, and we can't figure it out. And they put out to the press that it was helicopters, so they were trying to make people think that it was a Russian helicopter or a an exercise, a drill, but it makes no sense because why would you admit that it was unidentified if it was a helicopter? Because they had the technology to they would have intercepted it, seen it's a helicopter, and they wouldn't have said it was unidentified. But
Right.
they had to because they had no explanation. So that's really interesting.
Yep.
But to add to it, me and my buddy from college, I got him interested in this, and I would always go explore the base, and a lot of it is national wildlife, so you can go out there when it's open, and there's certain areas where you can't go. But we would explore the bunkers, and there's lots of places you can. And we specifically went outside that alert area and went all around that after we found out what happened with the UFO. And that night, we went back to one of my friend's house, and there was four of us standing out in his driveway. And this light comes through the trees, and it's a red light that's going around in circles, and it's searching, and it's flying through a really dense forest right next to us, and you can tell it's looking for something. And we all look at each other like starting to get freaked out. Are we really seeing this? And it zooms to the edge of the trees near where we are and shines a big white spotlight right at us.
Hmm.
And it's staying in the trees, hovering. And it's like it looks like a really advanced drone, or who knows? We couldn't see really what it was because it was like hiding in the woods.
Hmm.
But it looked at us, and we all jumped in the car, and we're like, "We're getting out of here." And one of my friends is like, "I got a wife and kids inside. I gotta go in the house." And we've really never been so scared seeing something like that. But
Wow.
there's more accounts on that base where they have seen huge objects and just weird things, and the government tries to say some people you ask, they won't tell you anything because they don't want to, that was part of the cover up. So
Of course. Did you hear anything when it was hovering? Like, was it making any other noises?
um not really, maybe a little buzzing, but you could definitely tell it was looking around, and it definitely like saw us. And this was right on the Canadian border,
Mm.
so there's border patrol in there, and that's one explanation, is they have
Mm.
something like that. But it was flying through the trees, like underneath, there's dense branches everywhere. Like, I don't know how something could fly through those type of trees.
Right.
And the feeling we got was like, this is crazy. Like, this was nothing like a drone. Like, we were all really freaked out at the time. It was quite a while ago, but it was the same night that we went out to that place, and I just thought it's either
Huh.
the government like checking where we are and what we're doing, or
Right.
it's the thing that stopped this, and it's just monitoring the place, and we might have like triggered it because we were out there because
Of
it was that
course.
same night.
So, having been or, like growing up in that type of area, were these like nonchalant? Were these stories shared nonchalantly amongst people? Like, did everyone kind of have this weird supernatural thing going on with the military base nearby?
Not everyone out there really knew stuff like that was going on, but you had to have what's called a security queue clearance to get into this base, and it was like need to know top secret level data. So this was a whole side base on the military base. So
Hmm.
there's once in a while you'll find one of those people. Most people say, "Oh, it was the helicopter. It was some helicopter." Okay, but like then they look at you and kind of go, "What do you think?" And they leave it open. Like my uncle worked out there, and he would tell me that, but they didn't want to say anything of it. And
Right.
that guy Michael Wallace on YouTube said the higher ups pretty much said, if you see anything, report to us. Don't tell anything. We don't want the public to know anything. And that was part of it. And this is like documented. Um, it went up to the CIA, the Atomic Energy Commission,
Wow.
the DOD. So
Yeah,
there's a lot more on that, but
they have a history of wanting to cover things up. I mean, you can look up the old articles that came out right in the wake of Area 51 crash landing, and it went
yes,
from
it's kind of similar to that. Yep.
Yeah, saucer to balloon, and it kind of switched up in, I think, the 80s or 90s. They had some official story now where, it's some other type of weather balloon you didn't know about. But that's what they do. And I grew up near a military base, and I've seen weird things in the sky that I can't explain. I believe there are things operating in the shadows that we just can't explain, but I also believe that there's just some crazy military tech that not even the higher ups as we know them know about.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that's cool that you're talking about technology today, because I was like, well, that's the story. I had 3 stories, but that's the only one I'm going to tell today. But
sick.
But it was the technology, and it just would blow your mind. But I also believe in the other side of it with the spirits, and I have ghost stories and all that. But you don't know on both sides. There's things we don't know on both sides. So
exactly,
for sure.
I think there could be a trading of information happening between some supernatural entities that maybe they shouldn't be dealing with, and it's they've been privy to information that we can only fathom, or maybe we can't even fathom. I'm
exactly
what type of portals they're building underground right now. But hey, man, that's a crazy story. I love that. The Maine is such a great, interesting, mysterious state, especially when you get up to northern.
It's one of the most up there with the UFO sightings. It's one of the best states for that, and we definitely have some good ghost stories and stuff like that too here for sure.
Yep, I know Stephen King really sucks these days. But he wrote some.
I hear you. Hey, let's go, Brandon.
yeah, dude, it's horrible because he wrote some great horror novels back in the day. But that's a shame that they had to clone him like that and give us this new terrible Stephen King. But hey, man, it was nice talking to you. Appreciate the call in.
Thanks, Brandon.
Thanks. I appreciate it a bunch.
Have a good one.
Cool. You want to go to another call?
Yeah, let's do it.
I think we have only one left.
Let's do it.
Everyone's having technical issues tonight.
People even on the other people even on the other end with nothing to do with us are having technical issues.
I know. So one person is having there's rain where they are. Okay, I don't know.
It's probably fake. Fake.
Yeah,
the
fake
clouds.
I know. I got you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're gonna bring in Joshua.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Hopefully he's with us. Joshua, are you with us? Damn, Mike wants to go. Joshua. Oh boy.
Should have knocked on wood. Can you hear us, sir?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can. How are you?
Pretty good. How are you?
We're good. Thanks for joining us on this crazy night. Tell us. I believe you have some pretty wild stories.
Oh, yeah. So I'm a deliverance minister. I'm part of a group called L418 International, and we do mission trips to Africa. I've only been there a couple of times. The head pastor's been there several other times. But, I mean, if you want to talk about casting out demons, we've dealt with just about everything you can think of, other than I personally have never seen somebody levitate off the ground, but I've seen, or my pastor's talked about stories where he's an engineer. So he talks about a lady that he was praying for one time when he was early in the ministry that floated off of a table, and he took a piece of paper and went under her. And, engineer brain activated, and he went, wow, that's really cool. And then he went, oh, no, she's floating off the table. I'm a minister. I have to do something about this.
So I want to hear this. But can you describe for us what a deliverance minister is, for those who don't know?
Yeah, essentially it's an exorcist, but with some extra steps. I know that there was a lady that called in a few weeks ago that talked about seeing a deliverance minister coming in and yelling at the demon and all this kind of stuff after asking a bunch of questions. He got the first part right. But one of the things we teach people in Africa is you never yell at a demon, because all it does is rile them up.
Nothing at all? Like, can you yell Christ at a demon to make it go?
It's probably the first thing you're not supposed to say, honestly.
Does that make it worse?
Sorry.
No, yeah, tell us. So what would you then do if you're called on to a scene?
So typically what we would do is we would schedule a time with them. Most of the people that we have aren't frothing at the mouth or something like that. If that happens, a different mode has to kick in, and you go into what we call spiritual warfare, which is you pray, you ask God what to do, and then you speak in the name of Jesus for the demon to calm down, to bind it, and then to cast it out. So It can vary depending on the situation, but typically what we'll do is we'll find people that are having issues. Say, we've had people have problems getting a job. They can't get a job anywhere. They say that they feel like they're cursed and they've been rejected by everyone, their family, everybody, just their entire life.
Mm-hmm.
And so we'll sit down and we'll pray for them. And typically we either have, I like to work with either a pastor or a psychologist that knows how to do this stuff. And we'll talk to them about their problems, and we'll go into prayer. And then after we're done with prayer, what we do is we start looking in the spirit. I personally have the gift of discernment. And so when I look at a person, it looks like, what would you call it? Augmented reality overlay in the spiritual realm. You'll see.
Have you always had that ability? Is that something you've?
No. When I was a kid, I did not have something, or the only memory I have of anything like this was I would go to the bathroom in our old house, and every single time I would just freak out. And it was like something was there out to get me, and I didn't know why. So I just stopped using it altogether before we left.
Wow.
I since realized that that was a demon. It was probably a demon of fear or a demon of death, something along those lines that was affecting me. So
continue your story.
So typically when we're looking at somebody, I've been doing this for so long that I'll recognize the demons. I know where they go, what they do, how they attack a person. Typically the way that I try to describe it to people when we're praying for somebody is a demon is there to get into a wound that's already open. A wound can come from anything. It can come from your parents scolded you all the time when you were young. It can come from, you got fired from a job that you really valued. You broke up with your girlfriend. You got cheated on. Anything along those times or lines. Anything traumatic. And then what the demon does is
you're talking like any type of emotional, psychological trauma.
Yes.
This becomes like a weakness point for a demon to slip in.
Yes, that is exactly right. And so this can happen to Christians too, although we typically don't like using the word possession because it doesn't really matter if they possess you or not if they have an influence over your life. So they can be outside of you and they can still influence you by whispering in your ear. That's how I first dealt with a demon. I was having trouble sleeping, like I described to you, panic attacks every night. I started meditating, closing off my mind, and this voice came in like the Joker. You're going to die. You're going to get sick and you're going to die. And I looked over and said, that's not my voice. And this thing like a spider was on my shoulder, and it saw me look at it, and it darted into my closet. That was my first encounter with the demon.
Wow. How did it look?
It looked like a little black, shadowy spider figure, and it moved so quickly I could barely see it dip into my closet. And you had a guy on the show who said something about demons that get around fridges.
Yeah, it was like a repeating, I think, a past life is what we were thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, so the same type of thing happened so we were working with psychologists, casting out demons out of her patients, or praying for them at the very least, not always casting things out. And I noticed that there was a demon in her fridge. And I opened up the fridge to look around, and it was just an absolute mess. And I was just like, I don't know why there would be a demon here. It took me another 2 years to realize they're attracted to dead animals. Spirits of fear and death, like graveyards. So in the Bible, there's a legion. Legions are made up of spirits of fear and death. Yep. The man comes out of the graves to Jesus, and he's, saying all these crazy things. And then Jesus casts them out into the pigs, and they go over into a ravine. So it's the same type of deal. When you go into a grocery store, I've noticed that there are fairly large demons that often go into the meat aisle and to other parts where there are dead animals, and sometimes into other areas, but it just depends.
Why do you think they feed off that?
I don't know if it's so much feed. I think it's more like they associate themselves with it. Each demon only ever encourages the sin that caused it to fall from heaven. Because if they went any further, they would extend their sins and they would get themselves destroyed very quickly. That's why they don't just up and kill people. That cross the line, God would send an angel and wipe them out.
Right. It's like a parasite. They need a host to stay alive, to keep having a place to live. But they keep
kind of. It's like an army, and they know what their target is at certain individuals, and in certain situations, in certain places, they know they have an advantage. So if you're in a grave, what are you thinking about?
Right. Just death.
Yeah, death, or you may be afraid of death. Yeah.
Yeah. That's crazy. So
People are afraid of graves.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through one of these deliverances that maybe haunts you or something that sticks out in your memory?
Oh God, which one do I want to this? Well, there was one deliverance that we did in Africa, and this one's always stuck in my mind because when I went on this trip, my best friend knew, and I've known him since I was in diapers. His dad is a pastor, and he's the head of our ministry. We didn't know that he did this kind of stuff. He just randomly invited us to Africa one time, and we said, my dad and I prayed about it. We decided that we would both go. But I decided I was going to be silent. I wasn't going to talk about being able to see demons. I had been dealing with it for 3 or 4 years, but I just wanted to know what was going on from their perspective. Mm-hmm. So I kept my mouth shut the entire trip. We get down to Tanzania. These two bishops pull this guy up, and I still remember it vividly. The guy could barely stand on his 2 feet if you helped him. He had kind of a crippled up hand in both hands, and in one hand he had a little notebook. In the other hand, he had a red pen that he could write with. And so they put him in front of the entire audience. There were about 50 people there, and they say, "Okay, if you're for real, heal him." To our pastor.
Right.
And so he said, "Get every single minister in here, get them on their feet, bring them to the front, all the pastors, because we're going to teach them what to do." So he brought them all up, and then he said, "First, we're going to pray." He can't speak, by the way. This guy, not only can he not stand, he can't speak. That's why he's got the red pen and the piece of paper. Mm-hmm. So he says, "Get everybody up here. We're going to start praying." So they start praying. And then when they're done, after about 5 minutes, he looks around at his team and he says, "Does anybody see anything in the spirit?" Like I said, it's kind of like an overlay. Sometimes people have visions. Sometimes they'll see things directly on a person and identify the demon. Sometimes they're just given a word or a name. In my case, I'm new at this stuff, so I'm looking at the guy like, man, he looks so shadowy in the spirit, I can't even tell. There look like there's some sort of chains on him, but I'm not going to say anything. So one of the ladies comes forward. He has chains on his wrists, and there are chains around his neck and down to his feet and his ankles. Another lady, he's covered in some sort of shadow. There's some sort of demonic presence. We don't know what it is, but he's bound up really bad. And so I'm like, okay, that could be a fluke. Whatever. This is my first experience, right? So that could be a fluke, whatever. So he says, "Okay, in the name of Jesus," and he goes through cutting off curses, chains, in the name of Jesus. Then he gets the guy up on his hands and is supporting him with some help. And then he says, "We're going to walk around the room," because that's what he said he saw God doing with him. So he's walking around the room and they're singing and all this kind of stuff. And all of a sudden, as we're walking around, normally I have to focus to get into the spirit to see something. But if it's dramatic enough, I'll see it without even trying to notice it. I see this massive flash of light and something like clear pottery comes off the outside of this guy. And I went, well, I don't know what just happened, but something happened. But still keeping my mouth shut, we go around, he sits back down.
Sorry to interrupt, but when you say clear pottery, are you saying like there was
like
a casing around him? Like on his...
Yes.
Yes,
it looked like it shattered off. It's like if you took a piece of pottery that was clear or a glass pottery that was clear and just shattered it on the ground and it just fell off after a flash of light. It was like a bolt of lightning the way I saw it.
Okay.
So we go into the pastor's room and we're sitting there and I haven't told anybody anything. Even when I was called on, "What did you see?" I say, "I don't know. I see something like them, but I don't really know." So he goes around the room and he says, "Wow, that was really powerful. What did everybody see?" And 2 people say, "Yeah, it was really powerful. I saw, all these different things happening." And then my best friend who was sitting next to me, I hadn't spoken to him about this at all. He said, "I saw an archangel throw a sword down and then this clear glass shattered off of the guy." And I went, clear glass is close enough to the pottery that I was thinking it looked like. I didn't see an angel. I didn't see a sword. I saw the flash of light that he described, and I saw this pottery come off. So nothing big had happened, but the guy was really excited. You couldn't, it was like a different person almost, but he couldn't speak yet. Mm-hmm. 2 days later, I get a text on my phone. I'm like the lowest member of the group, and they know that. I get a text on my phone, "By the way, the guy that you prayed for, he's able to move around a little bit on his own now, and he's speaking again." So that was my most vivid, memory.
I believe that demons populate this realm. But what do you say to skeptics who hear these stories and are like, "This sounds just like, maybe intrusive thoughts and or flights of imagination?
So if you are doing this long enough, you just hear enough stories to where if you go looking, what I would say is you can find this stuff on your own, but you have to be willing to have an open.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's aliens, like you want to think, what's the difference between an angel that is interdimensional and an alien?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't see a difference.
Right.
So if you want to call it aliens, that's fine. And a lot of atheists like the aliens instead of angels. That's fine with me.
Mm-hmm.
But the power of God, when you've seen it a few times, when you've seen a man that can't speak or can't walk, get up and start walking and start speaking again, when you hear somebody who was, had cancer and suddenly it's in remission, and the doctors told you that they were going to die, anytime now. I mean, I could go down a list of stories of things like this that have happened that sometimes it works out really well. Other times we don't ever guarantee a healing. We just say, we'll pray for you and we'll see what God does because we don't know what he's going to do.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. So you said you kind of have like this, you see like an augmented reality you're saying when you're looking at these certain situations.
Yeah.
Is that something you see day to day when you're just about anywhere you go?
So most people in my group can do it to a certain extent. When I started to have the gift, I swore to myself I would never close my eyes, which means I was seeing horrifying things that I didn't know how to deal with. I go to the grocery store and I see this massive demon and it's talking to me and saying, you're a problem for us. You can see us.
Mm-hmm.
Or I go near a graveyard and they're saying, go to that kid. He can see you. And not to mention I'm a Christian, so they know I'm a child of God as well. So that's a bigger problem for them too.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of the people in our group, what you do is you learn to shut it off. You can turn it off and then you can turn it on when you need to see it again. I just decided that I was going to keep my eyes on as much as possible so I could see around. So normally, like I said, I don't see the big stuff unless I'm really looking hard. And a lot of that is getting into prayer first and then talking to God, and then he'll reveal what he wants to reveal. But when it comes to really big stuff, you'll like this one. This is an interesting one. So in Fulton County, before the last election, I live in Georgia, and I was going to Georgia Tech for a PhD. And I saw a snake. I've never seen a demon this big before. I've never seen one this big since. A demon as big as a tower that was in the city. And when I saw it and it saw me back, it said, you're a problem. I'm going to come after you. And an angel dropped down and said, don't kill him.
What does that mean?
And it means don't end his life. They can kill you. It's just that, again, if they go over the line, God will intervene directly. He can bring the dead back to life.
You're saying you heard it tell the demon not to kill you.
Yes.
Okay.
The angel dropped down for just a split second and said, do not kill him, and then disappeared. It started out in the city of Atlanta. About 2 months later, it moved, and this was about 6 months before the election, over to Fulton County. And I just was scratching my head like, what the heck is going on? Why is this massive demon in Georgia? There's no reason for this thing to be here. And then the elections happened. And just about a month before the elections, it disappeared. You can ask my parents. I was telling them about it. And anybody that would listen to me about it who didn't think I was nuts. And it was just, I just was shaking my head like, what in the heck is going on? And then we have all these weird things going on during the election. Now they have lawyers going after Trump in Fulton County, which I think is all a bunch of BS. I think it's been cooked up. A lot of this, I think, was put in place. These demons are able to get their people in power, and they selected the people by hand, by this massive demon did. And this was one of them that I would say I'm powerless against.
Wow.
I've dealt with dragons as big as about a building. They're not fun to deal with, and I like to do it in a group. This thing, if it came back, I might be able to knock it out. That'd be about it. And it'd probably kill me in exchange.
Before we let you go, I can't let you just say you've dealt with dragons as big as a building before you tell us a little bit. Before you say you can't just say that and leave it there. How does that happen?
So the primary demons that we see are either snakes or dragons. Those are spirits of Satan. Satan is described as a snake or a serpent or a dragon. Mm-hmm. Then there are cats and birds, which are spirits of perversion, and they do everything they can to pervert God's law. And then the last set is typically spiders or dogs. If you know Anubis, spirits of death. I've seen one of those.
Dragons.
Dragons.
Something that looked like Anubis,
Yep.
like with a dog head.
Yes, dog head, human body.
Okay.
It came out of my dad, came after me. I was still living with him before, or actually, no, I wasn't with him at that time. I was over in Kennesaw at the time. I was there on the weekend. He went through deliverance and his demon came after me. And I just about had a panic attack when it came after me because it's a spirit of fear. And fear and death are very closely associated, just for the record. So I've got a whole system for this kind of stuff. I can send it to you if you want me to at some point. But as far as dragons go, they can be small. They can be as small as a human, or they can be as big as a building. The biggest one I think I've dealt with is about as big as our Capitol building in Snellville. Mm-hmm. And I was not very nice to it. I called on the name of Jesus to basically drop a bomb on it. And I got hurt in exchange because I was too darn close to the thing. But again, this is all in the spirit. I didn't physically get hurt, right. And then I had to ask God to heal me because I was stupid.
I want to make sure clarification. This is a spiritual bomb you're calling for, not a...
Yeah, not bomb. Physical.
Okay, well, that's good.
Yeah, not physical. No.
Yeah, I feel like someone should draw
I would never do something like that. Yeah.
Someone out there should draw someone fighting a dragon with a spiritual bomb. That's amazing. Yeah. That's amazing.
Like Dragon Ball Z.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you're going Super Saiyan out there, and this dragon's about to get you. But that's awesome. I appreciate the phone call, man.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Have a good night.
You too.
Cool, but okay, here we go. I was like, oh my god.
So, how are people looking? That was everybody, right?
I think that was everybody.
So that's interesting, because I'm skeptical of those stories.
Definitely.
But I've talked to so many people who have similar stories, where it's like, I have a hard time sometimes being like, are these intrusive thoughts? But I also believe in demons. He also mentioned about the demons who whisper in people's ears. One of my favorite books is The Screw Tape Letters by C.S. Lewis. Mm-hmm. That depicts that world, right? Of like the demons tempting people, which I believe is real. I believe temptation and the stuff like he's talking about weaknesses in your spiritual defense, however you want to put it. Something crawls in there, whether it's from inside your own psyche and whatever trauma you've got going on, or a freaking demon. My buddies who have the Nephilim Death Squad show, Raven and Top Lops, that have a great interview out there. I forget the guy's name, but he talks about schizophrenia being a type of like possession that they don't really have medicine for, because they're treating it as if it's like this chemical thing, but it's actually something else, or possession. And so while this last caller was telling me this stuff, I'm thinking about my time in Georgia, where I went down there just to look for Confederate gold with these people, and it turned to all those ghost stories.
Right.
And I met this medium who had stories just like this guy, and and it's funny because it's in Georgia, but he's like, I dreamt about a giant demon, but it's like. But
that's the thing, like I want to believe, but I'm also skeptical. I'm like, how? But also, like, why would all these people lie about it? Unless if it is just dreamlike and they can't make sense of reality in dreams. But that's like everybody that feels that.
I think there's something there, and I think sometimes, like, he says it too, where there's people watching that person in Africa that he's claiming that people are healing, and they all have different interpretations of what they're seeing.
Right.
So there's something that we're interpreting with our, lens.
Yeah.
That we're putting our own, meaning to. So it's like, I don't think it's going to be a universal thing.
And also, like he said, like being open to it, as opposed to like, no, this is bullshit.
Have you ever met like a demon? You ever think you met a demon?
I mean,
like, you're from Long Island.
Yeah, but not like in the sense of like, I mean, demon like, okay, you're a malicious person, not like demon like, oh, you're there's a spirit inside you. And
see, the thing that really changed it for me, I think I mentioned this on the first episode about when like the news of Epstein broke.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's pure evil.
Yeah.
And I was at that time I was still considering myself an atheist. And I'm like, if evil exists, there's got to be the opposite. In Earth, I see balance. Maybe if there's that kind of evil, there's got to be good. And then I experienced what I thought were people possessed by actual demons when I went and helped Alex Rosen catch those child predators in Ohio. And I remember looking at that one in the face as he's telling us the most disgusting things and being like,
That's a demon.
that's a demon. His
I guess
face,
I can't distinguish the difference if I had actually seen one or not, especially if it's in human form.
I don't think there's one way of describing them, and probably not just one type.
Yeah.
Right? Like how people who talk about aliens or different things, they see tall grays and small grays. Like remember that guy for that one story we did in the first book where he claimed to be abducted by 20 different aliens throughout his whole life, and he had this whole story with the getting cut into his brain, you know. And then people can look that up and see how other people have similar situations. Yeah. So it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell. But where are you with? Do you believe in the demons? Like,
I think so.
Do you think?
I'm open to believing. I'm also skeptical.
You're agnostic,
you know what I mean?
demons,
It's the same thing with like, okay, I have a dream where my dead grandmother visits me. Is that like a spirit, or is that just like I just opened up, one of my memory folders, and it was like a thought of, in my dream. Like I don't know.
Yeah, I think like I believe in God.
Well,
but when it comes to all these things, I think something's happening.
Yeah.
But it's hard for me to define it. And
it is hard to define.
I just live my life.
Yeah.
Hoping I don't have to deal with them too much.
Right.
Except in this house.
Especially when you have kids too.
Especially in this house.
Especially in this house specifically.
Oh man,
good.
It's been a crazy one.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think we should just we'll end it here for now because of all the craziness, and
next week's gonna be fantastic.
We had all these callers lined up.
It's Memorial Day weekend,
Yeah, we had I'm so sorry. We had all these callers. We had 5 y'all.
We had a great guest.
Joe, I'm so sorry to Joe. I'm so sorry to everyone who tuned in to listen to Joe. We will have him back. I want him to be sitting across from me next time. And I was speaking of like skepticism.
Yeah.
It's funny because I am skeptical of everything.
Yeah.
But also willing to believe.
Yeah.
And it's something I forgot to say to Tim when we had Tim on our first episode. There's a good difference in our skepticism.
Yeah.
We were once in like North Carolina, and we were at this like national park, this wild park, to go look at bears. And I swear to you, when I saw those bears, I'm like, dude, this is like a year and a half ago. I'm like, that's a man in a bear suit.
Like people see pandas and like they say pandas aren't real.
And he was joking.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I think I want to go back down and investigate it.
No.
So I'm like, I think they were actually men in bear suits.
No.
But like that's the thing is I had this problem of total skepticism of everything.
Yeah.
But anything's possible.
Anything's
possible.
At the same time.
I mean, with all the things
I do kind of wish I could. I don't want to invite anything in, but I do kind of wish I could experience something like these people that tell their stories, experience just to be like, okay, I get it.
Because
now.
they have so much conviction,
right?
And like I've told the story about what I think was my grandfather talking through the ceiling fan in Florida. I can't explain
Well, and that's also like when people die, you are kind of looking for answers. So are we just looking for things, like signs, like you're always seeing a certain thing, and they say that about like cardinals. When cardinals are there, it's the spirit of the person that's coming to visit you. It's like, but like, is it?
It's just hard, because I've been on both sides where I remember one time I was driving at night in the fog on this back road up in Cold Spring, New York. And I saw 3 lights making a triangle low on the sky just above the mountains. I was like, what the heck is that? I thought it was a helicopter.
Yeah.
Like the first caller. And on the other side of the river, of the Hudson River, is West Point, the military base where I grew up. So I'm like, it's a helicopter from the military base. Not even thinking UFO yet. But I'm going down this road, and the thing's getting bigger the closer I get. And it's a giant triangle, right? Like the 2 red circles on the bottom, 1 point at top. And it's just hovering.
Yeah.
And I get really close, and it's just like suspended above the dark silhouette of the mountain. I look right at it. It's a huge triangle, and I speed off because I'm like, oh my God, like that's a UFO. I go, this is so long ago, and I go pick up friends from a party, and I'm like, guys, I stopped the party. I just saw a UFO. It's right across the river. I'm like gonna like grab a team of people. We're gonna go hunt this thing down. So I'm telling everybody. I believe. I'm telling my dad the next day, and then that next night, I'm like, I'm gonna grab my friend and we're gonna go check it out. And I'm telling my friend Jesse. I'm like, dude, I saw this thing. I tell him everything I just told you. We go. Thing is still there.
Really?
And we're right up on it. And then the fog clears. Cell phone tower.
Oh.
Yeah, I meant to tell it to Tim when he was here. So I've seen that, and I know the feeling of believing
that
in
something's
something,
there.
but like knowing, then realizing you've been duped because I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
Right. But it looked so real.
You
And your
believe it for a
perception
second. Yeah.
with the fog and the way it was, and the winding road
Yeah.
changed the perception of it.
And it could have happened. It could have been something,
Right.
and then it just morphed into the other thing.
Thank you.
Right. I mean, it's possible.
But then I was gonna say, like, I was in Georgia doing this book, and then I saw that thing floating in the sky, making that pattern. Everyone else is seeing, and no one can explain it. And I talked to the DEA. I talked to the weatherman down, the meteorologist, who doesn't believe in UFOs,
Yeah.
but he's like, I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
You know, it goes away. It just
Yeah.
appears and it goes away, and when it appears, it goes up and down and left and right,
Yeah.
again and again and again. And there's nothing around.
Wild.
It's like logging country.
Yeah.
Right. So and it's just so nonchalant.
Yeah.
Like the first time I saw it, I'm at these people's house. They have big farmland there to find what they think would be Confederate gold. The father was called to go shoot a possum at the firehouse, which happens while we're having dinner.
Fun.
And when he comes back, he's got his gun. And he's like, "Oh, there's the UFO." Super nonchalant. I'm like, "Oh yeah, that is a UFO." He gives me the gun. We're looking through the scope, and I mean, I don't know what it is, but it's doing up, down, left, right. And,
But like, how big is it? Like, is it very
it
small,
was so
or is it
far,
so
it was
huge?
far away. So to me, it just looked like a dot, like a big, not a big dot.
Yeah.
But it was like just a gold dot moving
Yeah.
above the tree line.
Yeah.
And then when I did more research in Georgia, Jimmy Carter has a similar story about seeing the same type of shape, doing the same type of moving above the trees in Georgia. And he campaigned. That was when he was running for governor, but he campaigned on becoming president, being like, I'm going to release all the UFO stuff. He's like, I don't know what I saw, but I'm going to release all of it. And you know, the story is like when he told George Bush, the elder, who was running the CIA at the time, and this is just rumors, you know, no one knows, but the story goes that when he told George Bush when he became president, when Carter's president, I want to release it all, he said no. And whatever happened, something happened because Carter just stopped talking about aliens for his duration of his terrible presidency, and never said anything again. But there is a poem that he wrote to the aliens that Carl Sagan put in the Voyager and launched into space with the Golden Record. Remember when we took the Golden Record? Yeah. So that was part of the Inverted World 2 season / book, and they sent it up. And so Carter, I think, always cared and never really figured out. It's like a little redeeming quality to Carter for me. It's like he did care deeply. I don't know what George Bush did to Carter, but I think he said something like, "Look, you better shut up, or we're going to do to you what we've done."
Government things that we're not privy to.
Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. I'm so sorry for all the crazy technical stuff going on. We will be back next week, better, stronger, faster, braver, livelier,
less scared,
less gremlins,
yeah,
all these things. And we've got some awesome guests lined up. So we're going to make sure everyone can get beamed into the studio and talk to us about all the crazy stories we want to hear from. And again, for those who want to call in, you can hit me up at Shane Cashman at scanner.com, SCNR.com. I'm going through submissions. If you haven't heard from me yet, I promise I will get to you. I've been very fortunate to hear from a lot of people about all these stories. So we're getting through you, and we're going to get callers as we go on. So don't worry, I will get a hold of you. I'm going through everyone. And other than that, you can find me at Shane Cashman on all the places. You can find this show at Inverted Tales on all the social media sites. We're Tales from the Inverted World, obviously on YouTube.
I am Alex Ayala on X.
That's right. Yeah, which you're using now.
But it was sort of.
It's good to see you there.
Yeah, okay. Good to see you guys.
All right, well, we'll see you guys next week. Peace.